Today, I want to share something deeply personal, something we all experience yet rarely understand. In a world where everyone wants to speak, argue, prove, and shout, we forget the simple truth that silence can solve what noise can never fix. My friends, your silence is your strength. Not weakness, not fear, not surrender. Silence is your shield. Silence is your clarity. And silence is your greatest form of inner intelligence. Silence protects your peace in ways you don't even realize. There are moments in life when people provoke you, misunderstand you, judge you, or try to pull you into arguments that have no purpose. In those moments, your silence becomes your strongest shield. Because when you choose not to react, you choose not to be disturbed. You choose not to hand your mind over to someone else's negativity. We often think that responding immediately to solve the problem, but most of the time, responding only adds fuel to a fire that didn't even need to burn. Silence is not about running away, it's about rising above. It's a gentle reminder to your own heart that not every emotion needs an audience. Not every frustration needs a stage, and not every person deserves access to your inner world. When you stay silent, you give yourself space to breathe. You stop yourself from saying something you might regret. You allow your thoughts to settle, your emotions to calm down, and your mind to return to clarity. Peace is not found in winning an argument. Peace is found in not letting the argument disturb the harmony of your inner world. Your silence also teaches people how to treat you. When you don't respond to drama, the drama stops looking for you. When you don't react to disrespect, people realize their words cannot shake you. When you don't engage in unnecessary conflict, you show that your peace is not something you are willing to sacrifice for temporary satisfaction. And most importantly, silence helps you stay connected to yourself. In silence, you can hear your own thoughts. You can feel your own emotions. You can understand what truly matters and what is simply noise. Noise from people, noise from situations, noise from the world. Silence filters all of that out. Silence protects what truly belongs to you. The calmness of your mind, the strength of your heart, and the purity of your intentions. So when someone tries to disturb your peace, remember, reacting is an option, but staying silent is a superpower, not because you are weak, but because you refuse to let anyone else disturb the beautiful peace you've worked so hard to build within yourself. Silence teaches you self-control in the most beautiful and powerful way. When you choose silence, you choose mastery over your own emotions. You choose to pause before you react, to think before you speak, and to understand before you judge. In that quiet pause, you learn something that loud moments can never teach. You learn how to govern yourself. Most people believe strength is shown by how quickly they respond, how sharply they reply, or how confidently they argue. But true strength is the ability to hold back when your ego wants to explode, to stay calm when your emotions want to run wild, and to remain composed when the situation tries to shake you. Silence is the bridge between impulse and wisdom. It is the moment your heart whispers, "Don't speak yet. Let the storm inside settle first." When someone pushes your buttons, when their words ignite anger inside you, silence becomes the discipline that saves you. It prevents you from reacting based on temporary emotions. It stops you from saying things that your future self might regret. It helps you maintain your dignity even when the situation is undignified. You don't hold silence to protect them. You hold silence to protect your own character. Self-control is not learned in peaceful moments. It is learned when everything inside you wants to react. And the more you practice silence, the stronger this inner muscle becomes. You start noticing that not everything deserves your reply. Not every comment needs a comeback. And not every person requires your explanation. You begin to understand that responding to everything is not a sign of importance. It's a sign of emotional imbalance. Silence helps you break that pattern. Silence also deepens your awareness. When you're not rushing to speak, you actually listen. You observe people more clearly. You catch the tone behind their words, the intention behind their actions, and the emotion behind their reactions. You understand situations with far more clarity because you're not blinded by your own need to respond. In silence, you can see the truth that words sometimes hide. And with time, silence becomes a form of strength, that people feel without you ever announcing it. They sense your stability, they sense your calmness, they sense your control. People begin to treat you differently because they know you are not someone who gets shaken easily. Your silence earns respect that arguments never could. Silence transforms you. It teaches you patience, emotional balance, maturity, and resilience. It shows you that controlling your tongue is far more impactful than controlling the situation. And when you master this art, life becomes easier, relationships become smoother, your mind becomes lighter. Because you no longer react to everything. You choose what deserves your voice and what deserves your silence. When you stay silent, you begin to see people in their truest form. Silence opens your eyes in a way speaking never can. When you're not focused on replying, defending, or proving yourself, you become more present. You start observing the details, the tone behind someone's words, the intention behind their actions, the inconsistency between what they say and what they actually do. Silence removes the distractions and puts reality right in front of you. Most people reveal themselves not through what they tell you, but through what they show you when you're not responding. When you remain quiet, you give people the space to express who they truly are. Some will show kindness, patience, and sincerity. Others will show manipulation, ego, and disrespect. Silence exposes everything. It is like a mirror that reflects their character without you having to say a single word. When you don't react immediately, you see beyond the surface. You notice the small hesitations, the hidden frustrations, the unspoken expectations, and the genuine intentions. You start understanding who genuinely cares for you, who only uses you, and who only speaks to you when they need something. Silence reveals patterns that words often hide. And in that quiet space, you also understand the difference between someone's personality and someone's truth. People may act charming when you talk, but their real nature becomes visible when you are simply observing. Silence helps you see who listens to you, who respects boundaries, who values your time, and who takes advantage of your kindness. You begin to see what was always there but overlooked because noise kept you distracted. Silence also protects you from illusions. Many people pretend to be something they're not. They speak sweetly but behave carelessly. They promise big things but show nothing in actions. They talk about loyalty but disappear when you need them. In silence, you stop believing words and start believing behavior. You stop getting fooled by appearances and start reading character. When you stay quiet, your mind becomes sharper and your intuition becomes stronger. You sense red flags sooner. You feel energies more clearly. You trust actions over explanations. You stop forcing connections and start recognizing which relationships are real and which ones are temporary. Silence becomes your filter, separating sincerity from pretense. And the beauty is, you don't have to confront everyone you understand. You don't have to expose them. You don't have to argue. You simply learn, adjust, and move differently. Silence gives you the wisdom to respond without reacting, to distance without drama, and to protect your heart without making noise. Silence is not about cutting people off. It is about seeing them clearly, so you don't get hurt unnecessarily. It gives you the clarity to understand who deserves more of your time, who deserves less, and who shouldn't have access to you at all. When you observe quietly, you learn more in minutes than you would in hours of conversation. Silence becomes your teacher, showing you truths that words can never reveal. And once you see people clearly, you make wiser decisions, build healthier relationships, and protect your emotional world with maturity and grace. Some arguments are never meant to be won because the moment you step into them, you've already lost your peace. Silence becomes your greatest strength in these moments because it stops unnecessary conflicts before they even begin. When someone is determined to misunderstand you, no explanation will convince them. When someone is speaking from anger, ego, or insecure, your words will only become fuel for their fire. Silence breaks that cycle. Silence ends the battle they were hoping to drag you into. There are people who don't want resolution, they want reaction. They want you to raise your voice so they can justify their own behavior. They want you to argue so they can feel powerful. They want you to defend yourself so they can poke deeper. But when you stay silent, you take away their control. They don't know how to fight a person who refuses to join the fight. Your silence becomes the wall that their negativity can't climb. In many situations, speaking only complicates things. You try to clarify and they twist your words. You try to calm the situation and they accuse you of being defensive. You try to explain your intention and they only hear what matches their assumptions. Silence protects you from going in circles. Silence keeps you from entering a maze with no exit. When you choose not to argue, it doesn't mean you don't have a strong point. It means you don't want to waste your energy proving it. It means you value your peace more than the need to be right. It means you understand that some people argue not to understand but to dominate, and you refuse to give them that satisfaction. Silence also changes the dynamic. Without your reaction, the argument loses its momentum. The person who expected a battle is left facing their own words, their own emotions, their own behavior. Sometimes your silence makes them reflect. Sometimes it makes them reconsider. And sometimes it simply shows them that you are not someone they can shake easily. There is a deep kind of power in being unbothered. When someone tries to provoke you and you remain calm, it unsettles them. They expect you to respond the same way they would respond. But your silence shows maturity, discipline, and emotional strength. It tells them, without say, anything, that you don't participate in chaos. Silence also protects relationships. Arguments spoken in anger can leave scars that words of apology can never fully erase. When you stay silent in the heat of the moment, you give the relationship a chance to survive. You give emotions a chance to cool down. You give logic a chance to return. Many connections would still be alive today if silence had been chosen over impulsive words. And silence protects you most of all. It keeps your heart calm. It keeps your mind clear. It keeps your dignity intact. It keeps you from reacting based on temporary emotions that will fade, but leave permanent damage behind. Some arguments don't need your voice. They need your absence. Some situations don't need your explanation. They need your silence. And some people don't deserve your energy. They deserve your distance. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a complete, meaningful, and intentional response. When you choose silence, you are telling the world that you are no longer willing to waste your breath, your time, or your emotional strength where it will not be valued. People often think silence means you don't care, but in reality, it means you care too much about your peace to let someone else disturb it. There are situations where explaining yourself won't help. The more you explain, the more confused the other person becomes, not because your explanation is unclear, but because their mind is already committed to misunderstanding you. In such moments, silence becomes the best answer. It removes you from the role of justifying your intentions to someone who has already decided what they want to believe. Silence also protects your dignity. When someone disrespects you, mocks you, or tries to pull you into negativity, responding on why pulls you to their level. Staying silent keeps you above the chaos. It shows that you are not available for emotional wrestling matches. You are not available for arguments that drain you. You are not available to be provoked by someone who doesn't even understand their own emotions. Silence says, I know my worth. I don't need to prove it. Sometimes silence is the strongest form of truth. When you stop responding to someone who mistreats you, they eventually realize what they've lost access to. Your silence becomes the mirror they never wanted to look into. It reflects their behavior back at them. It forces them to see the consequences of their actions. Words can be ignored, but silence cannot. Silence demands attention. It demands reflection. It demands accountability. Silence also teaches patience. When you stay quiet, you allow life to unfold naturally. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop chasing explanations. You stop needing closure from others. Silence reminds you that not every question needs an answer, not every situation needs a conclusion, and not every wound needs to be reopened to heal. Some things resolve themselves when you stop touching them. And silence shows incredible emotional maturity. Anyone can shout. Anyone can argue. Anyone can react without thinking. But staying silent when you're hurt, when you're angry, when you feel misunderstood, that requires strength. It requires self-control. It requires a heart that chooses peace over pride. Silence also brings clarity. When you stop speaking, you start noticing. You notice who checks on you without being asked. You notice who respects your boundaries. You notice who becomes uncomfortable when you're no longer easy to provoke. You notice who values your presence and who only valued your reactions. Silence reveals everything. In relationships, silence can prevent damage that words spoken in frustration might cause. A painful sentence said in anger can echo for years. A moment of silence can save that. It gives space for emotions to settle and for understanding to return. Sometimes silence is not withdrawal, it is wisdom. There is also spiritual power in silence. When you stop speaking externally, you begin to hear internally. You hear your intuition. You hear your heart. You hear your inner peace that gets drowned out when you are constantly explaining, arguing, or defending. Silence realigns you with yourself. And finally, silence is a boundary, a healthy one. It says, I will not engage in what harms me. I will not let your words control my emotions. I will not let this situation take away my inner stability. You are not ignoring them. You are protecting yourself. So yes, silence is a response, a powerful, wise, and deeply intentional one. It speaks volumes without making a sound. It shows strength without showing aggression. It communicates truth without uttering a word. When you choose silence, something incredible happens inside your mind. The noise of the world fades, the pressure of responding disappears, and suddenly, your thoughts begin to settle like dust in a quiet room. In silence, your mind finally gets the space it needs to think clearly, deeply, and honestly. Most people don't realize how much mental energy is wasted in constant talking, defending, reacting, or explaining. Silence is the moment your brain finally breathes. When you stay quiet, you are no longer rushing to reply, and in that stillness, your mind begins to organize itself. You start to understand what you truly feel, what you truly want, and what is actually happening around you. Silence sharpens your inner clarity. It allows thoughts that were buried under noise to rise to the surface. Ideas you never noticed begin to appear. Solutions that seemed impossible begin to form. Silence opens the space for wisdom to emerge. Our brains are not designed to think deeply in the middle of chaos. When we're constantly speaking, arguing, or reacting, the mind becomes cluttered. But silence cleans that clutter. It resets your emotional system. It slows down your heartbeat. It makes your thinking more intentional. You realize that the answers you were looking for outside were always inside you. They were just hidden under layers of noise. In silence, your mind becomes observant instead of reactive. You notice things you would have missed if you were too busy talking. You notice your own patterns, your own fears, your own strengths. You begin to see the true nature of situations instead of the emotional there. Your mind creates in the heat of the moment. Silence helps you respond with wisdom rather than react with impulse. And silence also gives your mind time to heal. Just like a wound needs rest to recover, your thoughts need quiet to untangle themselves. Silence is emotional therapy. It gives your brain a break from overthinking, worrying, and being pulled in different directions. When you enter silence, your mind starts repairing itself, reconnecting thoughts that were scattered and calming storms that you didn't even realize were going on inside you. In silence, your creativity awakens too. Many of the world's greatest ideas were born when people were alone, quiet, and undistracted. Silence creates room for imagination to grow. It gives your mind permission to wander, to explore, to reflect. You start seeing possibilities where you once saw problems. Silence also strengthens your intuition. When the world is loud, you can't hear your inner voice. When you become silent, that voice becomes clear. You start sensing what decision feels right. You start understanding which direction your heart is trying to guide you. You begin trusting yourself more because you finally hear yourself. And perhaps the most beautiful part is that silence helps you make better decisions. When emotions settle, when ego steps aside, when the mind is calm, You see the situation from a higher perspective. You understand what matters and what doesn't. You avoid mistakes that usually happen when you speak or act too quickly. Silence gives you time, and time gives you clarity. Silence is not the absence of thought. Silence is the birthplace of thought. It's where your mind organizes itself, where your wisdom grows, where your intuition becomes strong, and where your emotions finally stop shouting. When you give your mind silence, you give it the chance to guide you instead of mislead. You begin to think with clarity, decide with confidence, and live with far more peace than you ever imagined. When you speak less, something magical happens. Your words begin to carry weight. People start paying attention, not because you are loud, but because you are selective. Silence gives your voice value. When you are someone who doesn't talk unnecessarily, every sentence you do speak becomes meaningful. People lean in, they listen carefully, because they know you don't speak to fill space, you speak to add something real. In a world where everyone is constantly talking, arguing online, debating every small topic, reacting instantly, trying to prove their point, silence becomes rare, and anything rare becomes valuable. When you speak only when necessary, people understand that your words are not impulsive or emotional, they are thoughtful. Silence makes your voice feel intentional, not automatic. It makes others pause and reflect when you finally choose to say something. Most people speak without thinking. They say things they don't mean. They change their stories. They contradict themselves. But someone who holds silence first and speaks after thinking, that person is trusted. Their words are respected, remembered, and taken seriously. Silence teaches you to measure your words, and measured words create a powerful presence. There is a different kind of authority that comes from someone who listens more than they speak. When you stay silent in conversations, you observe deeply. You understand people better. You understand situations better. And when you finally choose to speak, what you say carries the wisdom of everything you silently understood. You're not just speaking, you're contributing. You're guiding. You're bringing clarity. Silence also makes your words emotionally stronger. When you speak less often, your tone becomes calm, grounded, and confident. You don't rush, you don't stumble, you don't speak out of insecurity. Your pauses make people think. Your quiet moments make people feel. Your presence becomes more impactful than someone who is constantly talking. People respect a person who has control over their words. They know you're not someone who speaks just to be heard. You speak when there is something worth saying. And the truth is, silence gives you the time to reflect on what you're about to say. It removes the mistakes that come from impulsive reactions. It protects you from misunderstandings. It prevents unnecessary arguments. And it shapes your words into something clearer, kinder, and more powerful. Silence refines your voice. People often ignore those who talk too much because they get used to their noise. But they pay attention to those who speak rarely because their voices stand out. You become the kind of person whose silence is felt and whose words are valued. Even a simple statement from you feels wise because people know it came from thought, not from impulse. Your silence also teaches others not to expect emotional reactions from you. When people can't predict your response, they respect your boundaries more. They think twice before provoking you. They understand that you are not someone who will explode or engage in pointless debates. You carry a quiet confidence that demands respect without demanding attention. And here's the beauty. Silence doesn't just make your words more valuable to others. It makes them more valuable to yourself. When you speak less, you learn to speak truthfully. You learn to speak intentionally. You learn to speak in a way that reflects who you truly are. Your words become an extension of your wisdom, not your emotions. Silence strengthens your voice. It transforms your communication. It makes your presence powerful without needing volume. You become a person everyone listens to, not because you speak loudly, but because your words come from a place of depth, clarity, and inner strength. Not reacting immediately, not letting every situation or every word dictate your emotions is one of the truest signs of emotional maturity. Silence teaches you to pause before responding, to consider before acting, and to hold your feelings in a way that does not control you. Emotional maturity is not about suppressing your feelings, it is about understanding them, managing them, and using them wisely. When you allow yourself the space of silence, you begin to see your emotions for what they truly are: temporary waves, not permanent storms. Most people live their lives in reaction. They respond instantly to criticism, anger, or provocation, and in that instant, they give away their power. Their moods are dictated by external circumstances, and their peace becomes fragile. But when you embrace silence, you step back. You observe instead of reacting. You feel, but you do not explode. You allow your mind and heart to settle so that your actions are guided by clarity rather than impulse. Silence creates space for reflection. In that quiet, you can analyze the situation calmly. You can understand the motivations behind someone's words. You can see whether the reaction you're about to have is justified or unnecessary. You realize that most conflicts are not about you at all, but about the other person's insecurities, frustrations, or misunderstandings. And this realization gives you the wisdom to respond with intelligence rather than react with emotion. Through silence, you learn patience. You learn that not every insult requires a comeback. Not every criticism demands a defense, and not every problem needs your immediate attention. Patience is not weakness, it is strength. Patience allows you to act from a place of control, dignity, and wisdom, rather than being pulled by fleeting feelings. Emotional maturity is built in these silent pauses, where you resist the temptation to lash out or over-explain. Silence also prevents regret. Words spoken in anger or haste often leave marks that cannot be erased. Apologies may heal, but the memory of harsh words lingers. When you remain silent in the heat of the moment, you protect both yourself and others. You prevent unnecessary damage. You preserve relationships. You preserve your own integrity. Emotional maturity is about knowing which battles are worth fighting and which are best left alone. And silence is the teacher of that discernment. Moreover, silence teaches self-awareness. When you are quiet, you can hear the subtle voice within yourself, the one that speaks with reason rather than emotion. You start to understand why certain words hurt you, why certain actions trigger you, and how you can respond in a way that aligns with your values. This self-awareness strengthens your emotional resilience. It allows you to interact with the world without being constantly tossed around by external forces. Emotional maturity also means understanding that other people's behavior is often about them, not about you. Silence gives you the distance to see this clearly. You stop taking things personally. You stop reacting out of pride or fear. You stop feeding negativity. Instead, you respond with calmness, with compassion, or sometimes with no response at all, because silence can be the most powerful answer. In the end, silence is not just a choice, it is a practice. It is a habit that over time shapes your mind, your heart, and your life. It turns impulsive reactions into thoughtful actions, chaos into calm, and conflict into understanding. Emotional maturity is born in these quiet moments, in the space between stimulus and response, where you decide to be wise, not just emotional. And those who master the art of silence carry a strength that is invisible yet undeniable, because it comes from mastery over oneself. The words we speak in anger or frustration can leave wounds far deeper than we realize. Often, we think that reacting immediately is necessary to defend ourselves, to assert our point, or to express our emotions. But the truth is, the words we speak in the heat of the moment can create regrets that linger far longer than the initial conflict. Silence protects you from this. It gives you the time to breathe, to reflect, and to understand that not every situation demands your verbal response. Not every slight misunderstanding or criticism deserves to be answered immediately. By choosing silence, you give yourself the gift of preventing regret before it is even born. Regret is born when we speak from impulsive emotions, from anger, jealousy, hurt, or pride, without considering the long-term consequences of our words. We say things we do not mean, We hurt people we care about, and we stay in relationships that could have been nurtured. Silence acts as a filter, a pause that prevents temporary emotions from turning into permanent mistakes. It teaches you that sometimes the best way to protect yourself and others is to hold back, to observe, and to respond only when your heart and mind are calm. When you embrace silence, you gain control over your narrative. Instead of reacting blindly, you choose the right time and the right words, if words are even necessary at all. Many conflicts resolve themselves when we simply choose not to engage. Silence allows space for cooling down, for understanding, and for perspective. In those quiet moments, you see the bigger picture. You see what matters and what doesn't, what is worth your energy and what is not. This awareness prevents regrets because you no longer speak from temporary anger, but from thoughtful wisdom. Silence also teaches humility. When we stop reacting impulsively, we realize that our need to always be right or always defend ourselves is often unnecessary. The world does not always need to hear our defense, and people do not always need to understand our side. Sometimes the peace we preserve in our own hearts matters far more than proving a point. By practicing silence, we avoid saying things that would later weigh heavily on our conscience, and we nurture a sense of inner integrity that cannot be taken away. Furthermore, silence allows relationships to breathe. Words said in haste can create long-lasting rifts, even in the closest of connections. By remaining silent in moments of tension, you prevent harm that cannot easily be undone. Silence gives space for emotions to settle and for understanding to return. It allows people and yourself to reflect and come back to conversations with clarity and calm. Many relationships would thrive today if silence had been chosen over reactive speech. Silence also fosters self-control because resisting the urge to speak impulsively requires conscious effort and discipline. It strengthens your emotional resilience. You begin to notice the difference between reaction and response. Reaction is immediate, emotional, and often destructive. Response is measured, thoughtful, and constructive. By choosing silence, you shift from reacting to responding, and in that shift, you protect yourself from regret. Moreover, silence protects your reputation. Words spoken in anger can leave lasting impressions on how others perceive you. A moment of impulse can overshadow years of good behavior. Choosing silence ensures that your actions and your character speak louder than any rash words ever could. People learn to respect you not only for what you say, but for what you choose not to say, because your silence carries a weight that careless words never could. Ultimately, silence gives you freedom. Freedom from unnecessary guilt, freedom from emotional entanglements, freedom from the burden of regret. It allows you to navigate life with wisdom, grace, and dignity. It teaches you that the right words, spoken at the right time, are far more powerful than countless words spoken in haste. And it reminds you that sometimes the most profound strength lies not in speaking at all, but in choosing silence and protecting your peace, your relationships, and your soul.